Hello and welcome to another adventure, a day out. So today, Rick and I have come to, where are we? Hales Fruit Farm.
Orchard Kitchen.
Orchard Kitchen at Hales Fruit Farm. We decided we would go out for an afternoon. We just sort of,
Afternoon in the Cotswolds.
yeah, break the monotony a little bit. Just an afternoon out, isn't it?
Yes.
We'll see you momentarily.
More tea, Vicar.
We're at Hales Abbey. But there is quite an interesting story about here, which is why I wanted to come. So let's go and have a look and I'll tell you all about it.
We're doing the same video, yeah? So
We're going to stop that. So I have left Rick doing his little intro bit because we swore we wouldn't do the same video. This was the high altar end of the Abbey. This was sort of the point that the congregation wouldn't be allowed beyond unless they paid a fee. I'll explain why in a moment. So that was the Abbey church itself, and up here was the high altar. This was also a very special site because if you paid a fee, pilgrims were allowed to come and see a genuine vial of Christ's blood that was on that high altar back there. Now I'll be honest and say, whether you believe it genuinely was is a matter for your own conscience. But pilgrims supported this abbey for quite a long time by coming to see what was certainly purported to be a vial of Christ's blood. And I'm sure it says on that one there. I have been here once or twice before, although not for many years. Sadly, this end of the church no longer exists apart from these sort of points here, which show where the pillars would have been. Obviously, sadly, that one and that one have been covered up, as I think they're sort of on their last legs. Ah, right. So no, these are the roof pillars, and that is the shape of where the individual little lady chapels. Well, I think they were lady chapels, but the decorative alcoves would have been. Terrible. I do this for a living, I should know this. But the whole site itself was a working monastic abbey, and obviously the worship side of things was a part of it that brought pilgrims here, but people did live here. And we're going to go over there and we're going to have a look in the areas where they lived. And I quite like to think about, years ago people would have been here living their daily lives just very simply. And even if a life of prayer isn't for you, and I can't think of anything worse. No, I'm kidding. But, even if that's not for you, a life of contemplation and prayer and quiet, there's got to be some appeal, hasn't there, to just having a very peaceful existence. Well, Rick's already got into it, so let's go and have a look at this. Oh, and yes, of course, there's a steam railway that wouldn't have been here in those medieval times. Now, I don't know if it's still the case. It used to be that National Trust members could access this site for free, as well as the English Heritage, who are the people that actually own and maintain it. I was never in the English Heritage before, but I did have a family membership of the National Trust. And I used to bring my children here. They used to have great fun just coming and not running around in a raucous sense, but they just, play quite happily. And daughter number 2, I've actually got a picture of her with her art stuff sitting just over there. So that's quite nostalgic, really, for me. Rick's enjoying it for the first time, so we're going to see how he's getting on. Well, he's missed the best bit. I was just saying all about the vial of Christ's blood that was kept here.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Rick needs to now stop and watch my video where I'll explain all about it.
Back in a moment.
So Rick's now doing his bit over there. He's saying all about the high altar and Jesus' blood. As you know, I've already done that. I was way ahead of him there. But we were just saying, these grey boxes that have been constructed everywhere, very sadly, this is all, it's weathering, it's falling apart. I mean, I know it's, you know, hundreds of years old, I'm not being silly, but you know, these are things that in our lifetime have been constructed. And I just think, you know, that what survived has survived for hundreds of years, but there's another erosion going on, and in 100 years this might not be here. So this was the chapter house, the assembly room where announcements were made and disciplines were enforced. And they would listen to a reading from the Rule of St. Benedict. Now that actually is quite interesting. So interestingly, 11 hours a day of prayer, 3 hours of work, 2 hours for eating, 5 hours for sleeping, and 3 for reading. That's a lot of study and a lot of prayer. Now, I don't think I eat for 2 hours a day, probably about half an hour, I think. And sleeping, I'll be honest and say, reaching that sort of middle-age point of quite a contemplative lifestyle, I probably only do sleep for about 5 hours, sometimes 6 or 7, but a little bit of insomnia from time to time, so 5 is probably the amount that I read. But yes, they would have had quite a structured routine. Now I'm not quite sure what bit I'm in now. See if it says on here. Their dormitory was above this room. So, and this is a day room. So they would have copied their manuscripts in here. Now, that actually is something else which I think is quite interesting. Because back in those days, there was no printing press. There was no ability to simply photocopy manuscripts. If you wanted a copy of a holy book, indeed any book, but particularly holy books, obviously in a monastery, so the Gospel according to St. Matthew, for example, if you wanted a copy of that, there was only one way to get one. You had to have somebody that would do you a copy. And so that's what monks did. They scribed and constantly rescribed multiple copies of manuscripts. And so that, yes, that would have happened in this day room. And then above, obviously not here anymore, was their dormitory where they would have slept. I don't think that's the bell calling us to prayer. I think that's the phone. But I could be wrong. So it's difficult to know whether that drain there was the fresh supply of clean water that would have been used for drinking, or alternatively the other form of water and other material that you wouldn't have wanted to have drunk. Yeah, it's one or the other, and I think it would be so important to get that right. I really like things like this, where the wall is still sort of so high, and although obviously the full height of the wall is gone, you can actually get a feel for where the rooms were, and you can walk through the corridor as it would have been. So I've no idea what room I'm in. The warming house apparently over there, we're going to have a look at that in a second, but I don't know if that was there originally, but just the ability to, you know, sort of show where the walls were. I'm going about walls. It gives you a feel for the building as it actually was, because obviously you couldn't have jumped over that because it would have been a full height wall. So just to, I know what I'm trying to say. It's a feel of it's a feel for what the actual building would have been like when it was fully constructed and not fallen down. That's what I was trying to say. So the warming room, apart from the infirmary and the kitchen, this was the only room that had a fire. So in the dead of winter, if they were really cold, they'd have had to have come in here to warm themselves up before they went back to copying and studying. But Rick is having some contemplative time over there, so I will go over and join him in a minute. Remember I was saying about the ingress and disposal of the water system? I've just found something. So I stand, quite literally, where monks hundreds of years ago would have sat. I'm not going to say any more. So this was the refectory, the room where the monks would have prayed. And I imagine that there would have been individual little sort of, I won't say booths, but little sort of areas where the monks could sit quietly and pray. It wasn't a room to sit and chat in. This was a very serious place where the monks would have felt that connection, that very early spiritual connection to a higher power than themselves. This here is where the lay brothers would have been. Now the lay brothers would have been the link to the outside world for the monks. The monks wouldn't have gone out themselves unless it was on a pilgrimage or to some sort of holy site or what have you. Yes, the outside world was only linked by the lay brothers, and they would have done, well, let's face it, the manual labour, the fetching and carrying. And there's a little bit about it here.
This is what I love about English heritage sites, because you can clamber around and
Yes.
get up close and personal with it.
Oh.
Right, do your ankles in.
Oh.
So monks built a dam at the head of the valley, creating a lake. Industrious little fellas, aren't they?
Now that was a Clarkson expression if ever I've heard one. So we've had a tour of the site, and we're back at the high altar.
What mead is like. Come and sample the world's oldest alcoholic beverage. A tasting table. Ooh! Ooh! Sorry, I just clicked all over your video. I like this though. This is genuine or a reconstruction.
I think this is a reconstruction, isn't it?
It looks a little...
I think the giveaways here, the plaster lines.
Yeah, that's from B&Q. You can tell.
Home base. So having just done the Abbey, we're walking across to the church. And I have been in here many a time, although I've just seen there's a gate. Oh, I do hope that's not locked. Let's go have a look. awful feeling that this had been put up for vandalism and it was locked, but it isn't, so we can go in. And I think that's a shame when you have a donation box. It's got to be locked. Isn't that a shame? Let's go in. So, in the back, this is a throwback to previous times. This, I strongly suspect, would have been at the front. I can't be certain, but this is a box pew. So this, for a small fee, the Lord or Lady of the Manor and family would have their own private area where they didn't need to mix with the sinners. Nice font there, you see. Blackadder once relieved himself in the font, but I don't think that's what this one was used for. Now, from memory, although it was a long time ago, this is one of those, I think they call them melodias, very old organs that you have to pump to get to work. Unless I'm doing something wrong, I think it's been deactivated. I think I'm doing something wrong. My friend John would know. Not John the microcamper, John the organist. He'd know. Ah, now I remember this. Those are the stairs to the tower where the bell's housed. Sadly locked off. Probably safest. Here, I remember these. I'm sure there was a door on these at one point. But this, you used to be able to lift this up. Oh. I think it's just a shelf. I thought it was a secret compartment. But this is very familiar. Very familiar. Right, well this brings us to the end of a rather nice trip. It's, where's Rick gone? There he is. It's been fun, hasn't it?
I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's been thoroughly enjoyable.
It's been something different. We didn't go camping, we didn't go to a National Trust place, we came to an English heritage place. No, it was good fun. And as you can see, it was a bit of a busman's holiday. So so yeah, there we are. Been a nice trip, thank you very much. And the next one, we've got another one planned, haven't we? Although we won't reveal, but we're going to the pub next time. So church this time, pub next time. We'll say thanks for watching and catch you on the next one. Bye for now.